Hello, and welcome to the Ohio Children's Trust Fund Kickoff event for April 2021, being Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. I am Brittany Pope, and I am from Ohio Guidestone. I'm so happy to be here. I am so happy to be a part of OCTF's events, and I'm so very happy to be a leader in my community, serving others to help prevent child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment. I wanted to share with you all one of my perspectives that I've had for a long time, well before I even had the words for the feelings that I had, and that is upstream or primary prevention. A lot of times we hear about, yes, let's solve somebody's problems, let's get people what they need, or sometimes you might hear about awful cases in the news and you're wondering to yourself, how did it get there? How did it get that bad? Well, one thing that I always like to bring up to people is although we might hear about one kid or one story or one family, it's never just that one. It's a whole system, it's a whole us. And so when it comes to prevention, we can't just look at it as in how did that one person or how did that one family get there. We have to look at all of the pieces and parts, all of the players to the game, and how we got to negative outcomes. And ask ourselves, what can we put in place throughout our child welfare systems, our educational systems, our public policy, and even our everyday community neighborhood systems? What can we put in place to prevent child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment? And that's where prevention comes in. Prevention asks us to take a look at what can we do now before a problem happens. It asks us to take a look at all of the things that people do well and not only waiting to look at what goes bad or the things that are done wrong. Let's take a look at what goes well and how can we replicate that. So when we learn about, wow, families who have the appropriate education about 3-year-olds aren't able to really use their words. Sometimes they use temper tantrums. Then a family knows, well, I'm not going to expect my 3-year-old to act this way, but instead, I as an adult am going to put in place what I've learned that, you know what, when that 3-year-old is throwing a temper tantrum, they just might need a little space, they might need a hug, and although they don't have the words, they have the feelings. And guess what? We too as adults have feelings. So maybe I can learn how to co-regulate with that kid. Maybe I can learn how to pay attention to a kiddo before they get so revved up and prevent some things that might seem so crazy, so outlandish as behaviors that kind of lend to situations where there might be a greater risk of child maltreatment. Or how can we look at families and learn that, wow, families really are doing their best, but sometimes tough times come to us all. Or sometimes some families and communities are literally born into tough times. What can we pay attention and learn? We might be able to learn to say, you know what? If families had just a little bit more support with this, or a little bit more support, or knowing where they can go to get support, maybe certain things that have negative pathways, maybe they don't have to go that way. And so when we talk about prevention, we're not just looking and pointing out the people who we think are going to be at risk for child abuse, neglect, or maltreatment. We're looking at all of us. We're looking at a greater community. We're looking at how in the world we can each be each other's brother or be each other's sister or be each other's good neighbor. And what I love about Ohio Children's Trust Fund is they put so much of their trust into organizations like the one I work at and community members so that they can learn what local families and children and organizations need to do a good job locally. Ohio Children's Trust Fund trusts us to have a wide scope of prevention activities, whether it is prevention to help individuals who might be in recovery so that they don't have to be away from their child or their child is at a lesser risk of neglect, or even to programs that I'm involved in to helping dads, because we hear so much about the importance of dads being involved. But when we take a preventative lens or an upstream lens, we're not waiting to hear a news story about, where was dad? Or, yeah, I read a new study about the absence of dads. We're not waiting for that. We're starting in the beginning, and we're learning how do we empower fathers so that we can be preventative, so that we don't have to continue to have cycles of absentee fathers and cycles of the negative impacts that children may experience from that. And we also are looking at things such as fatherhood because we understand that unfortunately some people have been put into a box that doesn't give them quite the amount of space to do the things that they're really good at. So I'm hoping today I can convince you that you can be an everyday hero. I'm hoping that I can convince you how important prevention is, whether it's your child, whether it's your child that you serve at school or in your organization. And I'm hoping that I can convince you that it's up to all of us to be everyday Ohio heroes, to help get our kiddos to the best outcomes that we possibly can and prevent as much as we can anything that raises the risk for child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment. Today I'm going to share with you details about the Father's Feelings Project. Before we go on, I just want to tell you just a little bit about myself as well as about the organization that I'm working with and get into more details about the project. I, again, am from Ohio Guidestone, and Ohio Guidestone is a behavioral health organization, and we pretty much kind of have like a T footprint if you think about Northern Ohio and going down the center all the way to Columbus. And throughout all of those different communities, our main goal is to help individuals who have a wide multitude of behavioral health needs. And we're really, really big on helping starting in early childhood, whether it is for early intervention services such as Help Me Grow or other home visiting programs put in place to support maternal outcomes, or looking at early childhood mental health and ranging the whole gamut all the way to adult services and seeking to grow our specialty serving individuals who are in recovery from a substance use disorder. In addition to some of those interesting areas, we also do things such as residential care for children, workforce programs for adolescents and young adults, and we do a good amount of research, and that's where I get to come in. I particularly work within the Institute of Family and Community Impact. Simply put, it is a part of Ohio Guidestone where our main focus is on research, advocacy, clinical innovation and training, and evaluation. And our number one goal is kind of a giveaway in our title. How can we build different types of programs, different types of support systems, and how can we get information out, whether it is sharing about what we learned in our research or sharing about some new science that's come out about the brain and how it interacts with our behavior, or even about how stress and trauma impact our brains as parents, adults, and children. No matter what the topic is, if it impacts children, families, and the community, and it is related to behavioral health, it is something that we are looking to be able to say to the world, we are here to serve your needs, to get more information out so that we can continue to help build resilient communities, resilient families, and resilient children. So a little bit about me. So you might be wondering all about my fancy headpiece here. I wanted to really, really fit into OCTF's theme where we're looking at everyday Ohio heroes. And so if you notice, I am going to be Wonder Woman today, but don't feel as if you can't join the party just because we're not here together. I want you to look inside yourself and ask yourself a question. Who is a hero? What does a hero do? And if you were able to see yourself in whatever you imagined or thought about as to who's a hero and what a hero does, kudos to you, pat on the back, kiss your brain. And if not, I'm hoping by the end of this, I can convince you that, look, just like me, you can be an everyday Ohio hero too. Because I feel blessed and privileged to sit every day in my desk, doing research, doing all of my nerd stuff, because I know that one day soon, some of the things that I'm researching, such as adverse childhood experiences or trauma and toxic stress for mothers while they're pregnant, or things that disrupt and dismantle family systems. I'm hoping that one day, because of the little drop that I'm adding in combination with all of your drops out there as everyday heroes, I'm hoping we won't have to study these things because they're going to go away. Because we're going to keep chalking away at the things that raise the risk of childhood abuse, neglect, and maltreatment. So the what? So again, I'm here to tell you a little bit about an initiative called the Father's Feelings Project. The Father's Feelings Project is in response to this statement here. There's no tool or survey or questionnaire that is available to screen dads, men who have a baby for paternal depression. Yes, dads can get depression too. I know a lot of times we spend time talking about maternal depression, and it's becoming more of a common thing for people to understand. But just as much as it's important to make sure we meet the needs of moms, we got to meet the needs of dads as well. So we decided that we wanted to take on this challenge, so to say. So about a good 6, 7 years ago, one of our leaders and assistant directors, Mrs. Era Yates, she was overseeing a program at the time where we were serving moms during pregnancy and a few years within having a baby. And her team was kind of really getting this feeling that, wait a minute, I had a dad ask me a question. You had a dad ask you a question? Yeah, dad asked me a question too. I had this dad who told me he wanted me to screen him too. And then I had another dad was like, well, is there anything that I can do for a dad? What we were noticing was there was this systemic expectation that dads didn't need any attention. That, dad didn't have that baby. Ain't nothing wrong with him. Or that, you know what, as long as we focus on mom, I guess she can fix everybody. And that's something that really stuck out to us. And we said, wait a minute. Not only are programs and systems set up to only target moms when it comes to a child, we were noticing that dads wanted to be involved. And sometimes we have this assumption, whether it is historical or whether it's from something we know personally, we have this assumption that dads, we don't need them until that baby gets a little older. We don't need them until, the kid is about 4 or 5. And what we have learned from decades of research and looking at human history and human behavior, dads are just as important as moms. And just the same risk that mothers have of developing depressive symptoms around childbirth and pregnancy, dads can have that too. And you're probably thinking to yourself, like, wait a minute. But that mom went through a whole bunch of chemical changes. And I would nod my head and say, yeah. And if we were in person, I'd ask you, what happens if I yawn? Or what happens if I just start laughing and I just continue to laugh, right? Normally, someone else in the room yawns and someone else kind of gets the infectious, contagious giggles. And I always use that as an example to demonstrate to people, hey, me over here yawning or giggling, I pushed the button over there on your end where you started yawning and giggling. Guess what? That was a change in chemicals. So when we're talking about, well, dads can't have depression related to childbirth because they didn't have any chemicals. They didn't go through changes. Wrong. And I promise you that my husband would beg to differ because I was so grateful with our 2 miracle daughters that he was the one who had morning sickness. How? What we've learned from so much research is that we as human beings, we interact on so many different levels. And we have the ability to impact what goes on inside someone else's body. So when 2 people are relegated to each other through a relationship, through having a child, no matter what the level is, we're learning that they have impacts on one another, spoken, physical, and otherwise. And when it comes to men or fathers, we have also learned that their hormones change. Some of their testosterone levels come down a little bit, and some of their oxytocin levels, which is the love hormone, they raise, they go up. So what that tells us is that even during pregnancy, even though dads are not the ones carrying the baby, their body and their brain is getting ready for a change to be able to take care of that baby. And no matter how much we prepare individuals for when they have a child, for when they're expecting, we know that there are still some things that can just cause you so much nervousness, so much anxiety. There may be things that are out of your control and it cause you anger. All of these things can combine and become a perfect storm, so to say. And that in combination with changes that you're going through physically, interpersonally, financially, and mentally and emotionally, that can cause something that we call paternal depression. And our hopes with this initiative are to be able to raise awareness about paternal depression and also to be able to put a tool in people's hands so that not only are moms being screened as early and as often as possible for maternal depression, we want to make sure dads are able to be screened. Because some of the other things that we found out is that when you're depressed, I mean, you're not feeling it. When you're anxious, all you can think about all the time is what's going to go wrong, what's going to go wrong. You can't really be present and enjoy the moment. And then when you're angry and frustrated, whether because things didn't go the way you thought they would or because of injustices, which are very real that people face, and barriers to being the best, sometimes that takes you out of your best game. And when we're talking about a baby, we also got to remember the other things that research has told us is that the baby's brains and little children's brains grow the most compared to any other time in your life between 0 and 5 years old. And what we've also learned or been able to prove, because I bet you your grandma would tell you this, is that good relationships help a child's brain develop. Good relationships help a child learn. Good relationships help keep a child's whole body healthy. And who doesn't want their child to be healthy, learn, and to develop? Well, when we look at what could go wrong, we don't just wait for it to go wrong. We want to be on the front end of prevention where we say, okay, well, if relationships are so important, let's talk about it. What could get in the way of a relationship? And if you've never experienced depression, then good gracious of life, I hope that you can believe me. Depression definitely can get in the way of a relationship. And the relationship that we want to make sure is continuing to grow, continuing to be watered, continue to be cared for, is that between a parent and their child. And so with paternal depression, sometimes things that might look like father absenteeism, it could be depression. We accept that withdrawal is a symptom of depression, so we should probably accept that that could be something that possibly happens to dads as well. We also know that things that make you feel anxious and things that make you feel overwhelmed and overrun, they might tend to shut you down. You're not able to be here and present in the moment. And if you're not there and present in the moment, you might miss some things. And what we've learned is that when individuals are there and present from before their baby is born, those first few months when their baby is born, they have a greater attachment. They're able to nurture them more. And most importantly, that baby is positively impacted by the presence of a dad. And so we want to take away any and everything that can be a barrier. But we need to learn what could be those barriers. So what we've done is we've created the Yates Paternal Depression Screening Questionnaire. It is a quick, short, simple survey. It fits on one side of a page where we go through and we ask some typical questions of typical depression symptoms, such as, I feel less satisfied with my life, or I have felt overwhelming sadness. But what we also did was took 100-item list that we brainstormed with one of our previous directors of psychology and other folks who are always serving dads, thinking about what have they seen, what have they witnessed, and then of course we've asked dads as well. What are some things that made you feel stressed? What made you feel anxious? What made you feel angry? And what really got you down? And what we did was we took these items and we scaled down out of 100 down to about 10 items that we think are really, really unique to the experiences that dads have that could raise the risk of them experiencing depression or anxiety. And many of the things boil down to interpersonal conflict with mom of baby or their wife, as well as self-efficacy, right? Self-efficacy pretty much can be thought of as confidence plus the ability to do. And when you think about it, we don't really groom and socialize boys to grow up to be dads. And we're not asking to really do too much different than what we've done for girls. You don't have to have a doll or you don't have to have a certain toy. But what we want everyone to recognize is that, we don't teach little boys about fatherhood. We don't sprinkle, like little thoughts and little gestures, right? As often as we do little girls. But imagine how unfair that is, that guys are raised in an environment where they aren't hyper-focused on fatherhood, and yet all of a sudden when they're going to be a father, they have to know how to check off all of the boxes. cross all of the T's and dot every I. And unfortunately, there's a strong stigma against mental health, especially for men. And so that makes men a little less reluctant to come forward and say, "Hey, I'm struggling. I'm underwater." So what we're hoping to do again is to raise the awareness about paternal depression and to cut down on that stigma. Because if we cut down on the stigma of mental health, we believe that more dads will be able to have their mental and emotional health needs met, whether they're depressed or not. We think that it's very important that we pay attention to men, that we listen to them, and that we create tools that are designed just for them. And the reason why we think that's important is this example. Back in the 90s, long story short, there were more and more women continuing to die from heart attacks. And the medical professionals were kind of dumbfounded, like, wait a minute, it's all of these public service announcements, it's a commercial here, it's a brochure here. How come you didn't come in when you felt them symptoms? Well, needless to say, the symptoms that were being publicized and used in different public service announcements and health educational materials, those were symptoms that were really unique and common to men. And then we eventually learned that, oh, wait a minute, well, when women are having heart attacks in general or on average, they feel symptoms this way. Well, we believe the same thing occurs for dads, that although symptoms are really, really common for depression across, men and women and across different cultures, we know that there are some differences. And so we are hoping that raising awareness about paternal depression and making a tool available that's unique to men, it will lower the stigma, it will raise quality of care and screening for dads, and it will help dads get the attention that they need. One, because dads deserve not to be depressed, and two, because we know how important the impact on paternal depression is, both on mom as well as the baby. And if we know that paternal depression has negative implications on interpersonal interactions between mom and baby, mom and dad and their child, and even longer for their children, well into adolescence, then that means we need to take a preventative stance, right? Stop it at the beginning or address it at the beginning. And we are hoping that once this tool is studied and we figured out, does it work, does it not work, is it sensitive enough to really capture the symptoms that dads are saying, and is it accurate enough compared to other tools that are used to diagnose depression? We want to be able to put it out into the world, right? And putting this tool out into the world will help improve programs for dads. The example that I gave at the beginning that kind of was the genesis of this idea was that there were these home visiting programs where they were really, really focused on mom, focused on baby, but nothing was there for dad. The picture is incomplete. The scale is not balanced, so to say. But now we can use this awareness and we can use this tool to be able to say, hey, those home visiting programs, they need to have a dad component too. And here's the tool to help you screen so that you can make sure we are doing warm handoffs or walking dads and supporting them on their recovery pathways if they do experience depression. And if they aren't experiencing depression, we now know how to educate them on some of the signs and symptoms, as well as educate the community and world at large about what paternal depression is, so that we can, if we see it, we can identify it, or if we learn more about it, we can prevent it. Responding to, treating, and preventing paternal depression, it also will help us cut down on incidences of child neglect, which sometimes we kind of just blame dads for being absent without really trying to dig deep and figure out, well, what are the social things that dads go through, and what are the things that they go through emotionally, and how do they come together? And that's what we're hoping, to be able to delineate the connection between social experiences and an experience of paternal depression, to be able to be as preventative as possible with our everyday lives being everyday heroes. And so we have a program going on now where dads get to come in, they'll take a few questions, they'll do a few questionnaires and take a survey. And we wanted to do more than just surveys. What we had learned when we first started doing this program was that even dads who were not depressed, they felt something. Like it just was like something heavy on their chest, something on their back, something that they just couldn't shake. They needed to be able to talk about how they felt. They needed to be able to say, wow, I felt this way and that way, without the risk of sounding like they're trying to take attention away from mom, or without the risk of them, sounding soft, without the risk of them, not wanting to be a father, or any of the negative judgment that, if we are honest with each other, that sometimes we sprinkle on men. And on some men, the negative judgment is put on heavy. So what we decided to do was to expand the program, and with the extremely humble and ongoing gratitude and appreciation of Ohio Children's Trust Fund, we were able to expand our program so that we could really, really get at the why we were doing it. So looking at what do dads want, let's take a pause and a break. Dads want to be a part of their children's life. I know you probably have heard stereotypes. I know you hear news clips. I know you read stuff on reports that there are some dads, they just don't want to be a part of their children's life. And you might have even read that, for example, African American or Black dads, they don't want to be a part. However, I'd ask you to continue to look with your own eyes, and I'd ask you to look at some newer reports. And it's not a competition, but while we're talking about busting up stereotypes and stigmas and barriers, Black men actually have some of the highest rates of involvement in their children's lives. So I think that we can check off number one, that dads want to be a part of their children's lives. It's not a secret. It's just something that we need to promote more. It's something that we need to recognize more, and it's something that we need to respect. We also got to think about that dads want to be included in their child rearing decisions and care. And yes, I know what you might be thinking. Maybe you're not. Well, but they don't know. That's good that we know that now, because what that means is we need to help dads. We need to help inform them about child rearing decisions and different ways to care. Dads want to utilize and hone in their natural caregiving skills. Yes, dads are natural nurturers. They too, just like women, are natural caregivers. We just have to make sure we make the space for them to be able to do it in their way. I am a mom, married to a wonderful husband, mother of two wonderful miracle daughters, and I too have to preach this to myself, that my husband, he doesn't have to do things like me to be a nurturer. He doesn't have to do things like me to strengthen or have a super strong emotional bond with our children. And he definitely doesn't have to do things like me to make our family happy and healthy. That is something that we have to continue to recognize. We got to let dads know that they matter. We got to let dads know that they are valued. We can't only keep waiting until we get to that news story or get to that report or get to that, casual gossip conversation where you're like, wonder where their dad is. No more of that. We can't accept that. If we want to change the lives of children and communities, if we want to give children the chance to be the best that they can be, we got to support all of the structures that are in place to help their healthiness, to help them grow, to help them not have to depend on being resilient, right? No more should we accept that, that kid is so resilient. We should be able to say that, that kid is resilient, but I'm so glad that he doesn't have to be, or that she doesn't have to be. And wow, I'm so glad that we learned how important dads are and how much dads matter and how much we need to value them in what we do. And one of the ways to do that is through supporting and raising awareness for paternal depression and making a tool available to them and giving dad space to talk about his feelings. So what we're doing right now, this is a cute little advertisement that one of our leads on our team, who I call our resident subject matter expert, i.e. he's a dad, and I wish I could pay him for that, but I can't. But he brings his magic every day as a dad to remind us that, Brett, dads just don't want to know that they matter. Dads just want to know that their feelings make sense too. And dads want to know that it is okay to have the feelings that they have. And so what we are looking to do is kind of pump up dads. Let them know that, hey, dad, you are a hero. And if you don't see yourself as a hero, you need to come talk to us. Come tell us why. Or dads who do see themselves as a hero, can you come talk to us? Tell us about those feelings. Sometimes we gush and we hear about all of the rosy and tear-jerking stories about mom and motherhood. And don't get me wrong, because I worked very hard to be a mom, and I'm very proud of those gushy stories. But you want to know what? It is not limited space in parenthood to be a hero. It is more than enough space for us women to be mommy heroes, and it's definitely more than enough space and a lot of need for dads to be superhero dads. But we got to listen to dads. We got to hear what they have to say. And so what we decided to do, instead of our own survey to only screen for paternal depression, we were like, you know what? Well, we're asking dad about how he feels prepared to take care of a child. We're asking dad how he feels prepared to maybe respond to the health needs of the mother of his baby or his wife, because maternal depression is a real thing too. And we're also asking dad, what are some barriers? What are some things that you're facing that get in the way? But you and I both know sometimes when you have a questionnaire, that question doesn't quite get at everything. So what we decided to do was go beyond only assessing and studying our paternal depression tool. We wanted to be able to really quick, in a few short visits, offer dads quick consultation. Give dad space to talk about those feelings. Give dad space to ask those questions that, okay, I know this might be a stupid question, or forgive me for asking this question. Or give dad space to ask a question that maybe he has been asking and he hasn't been getting the answer that he seems fit. We also wanted to make sure we gave dad a space to safely recognize what skills they might want to improve on. So if dad is talking to us and saying, you know what, I really want to go and, have the baby by myself, for a few hours, but I've never held a little wobbly baby before and the baby is too small. Well, guess what we do? We do two things. We remind dad that he can, and we also remind dad, look, you might be recognizing one thing or some things you're not good at, but let me tell you about some other strengths that we've learned about dad. And one of the biggest things that we're seeking to pump up dad and let him know he's a hero for is the importance of play. We have learned time and time again, study after study, that human beings learn, they grow, they develop, and they build stronger and healthier attachments when play is involved. And don't tell my husband I said this. We've also learned that dads are actually a little better at play than us women. Let me give you an example. Why are you playing with that baby? Why can't you come help me do this? Y'all over there playing and doing this, and we got to right? Us moms, we can see the forest for the trees, right? And sometimes our strengths seem to overcast or overshadow some other things that are just as important as making a child's bottle, getting a child ready for bed, and that's play. And so one of our other initiatives called Joyful Together is a parent implemented model where we just ask parents, like, infuse play all throughout your day. You're getting dressed? Play. It's time for bedtime? Play. And all of it is not happy-go-lucky. Some of it is short, sweet things, right? Getting ready for bed and playing a game we call Face Trace, where you trace your face, baby traces their face. Where baby does something to you, you do it back. Or another one that we like to call Let's Take a Trip, where you're using storytelling and you're using the imagination. Things that help a child relax, things that help a child feel loved, and things that also help their brain development. If we were to tell dads that they are good at that, perhaps that gives dads some more pride, some more energy, some more resilience to stick out the tough times of being a father. Because it is hard to be a father, just as it's hard to be a mom. But our goal is to validate the strengths that dads have, validate their voice even when they tell us, like, I ain't good at that. And as well as help dad understand how important it is for them to be involved in their child's life, even within the first year of their child's life. And so we ask dads to come talk to us for, 5 sessions. 2 of the sessions, we do the mental health screening, where dad is able to just kind of go through some questionnaires that, like I mentioned earlier, include our Yates postpartum paternal depression screening questionnaire. But it also gives dad a chance. Maybe there are some other things that are going on in his life. Maybe there are other things that he's just never had a chance to talk to someone about. And so we offer 2 in-depth consultation sessions. And what those sessions do for dads is it gives him space to safely explore things that are impacting him socially, mentally, and emotionally. And it also gives us space to be able to give dad the words or empower him with the language to say, you know what? I think I do want to go to a support group. You know what? I do want to join that fatherhood group. Or you know what? I do want to talk to a counselor. And we help hand dad over to another support system to help his mental health. Other things that we do, so that's 2 out of the 5 sessions. So the other 3 sessions were focused on pumping dads up. We're focused on sharing dads the importance of play, and we do everything online where we ask dad, go get your baby, bring your baby to the session so that we can play together, so that we can talk about, what activities are you going to try? And then when we come back and talk to dad the next week, dad can tell us the activities he tried, how it went. And I got to give away a few of our secrets. When we are talking about the play activities that we're doing, we're also layering on the stereotypical parenting skills that we assume dads don't have. Okay, does dad know how to feed a baby, diaper a baby, clothe a baby, keep a baby safe, carry a baby, hold the baby the right way? Some do and some don't. And sometimes that causes enough anxiety and enough overwhelm in a dad where it impacts his health, or it might impact his interactions with his child. So what we do is we kind of use play as a vehicle. And so we say, all right, dad, you told me you don't even know how to handle bedtime at night. All right, we're going to pull out a few of the activities from Joyful Together for bedtime. Or, hey, you're going to have baby by yourself for 2 hours this weekend? All right, let's talk about some fun stuff you can do as a dad that you're good at. Remember, play. You're good at play, dad. Let's talk about how you're going to play while you're feeding the. And we have a little baby doll or, a larger doll to model on our end as we're coaching dad through these steps, continuing to empower him, and all at the same time giving dad space to talk to us. Because what we want to be able to do is hear what dads have to say. There's a saying that's out, and it's not new, but it's gaining more and more traction and popularity, where it goes, nothing for us that's not by us. In short, what I mean by that is, no matter how excited and how passionate I am and how much I got to hold back my tears about fathers and supporting dads, I know that it's dad's voice and dads that have to be involved in the solution. Because if we're talking about how important dads are for the prevention of adversity in childhood, for the prevention of childhood neglect or maltreatment, we got to make sure dad's voices are represented. So what we hope to be able to do at the end of our project is, one, raise awareness for paternal depression. Two, we'll have a tool. We'll have a questionnaire that anybody and their mama or daddy will be able to use to say, you know what, is what I'm feeling, is that kind of along the lines of depression? And not because we want to stamp a label on someone's head. No. You get your blood pressure taken all of the time. And if your numbers are a little high, your doctor or nurse says, all right, well, you know what? We need to do something to work on that, right? So same thing. We don't have a blood pressure cuff for our brain, but sometimes we can use questionnaires like the Yates postpartum paternal depression questionnaire. We're hoping that that's kind of like a blood pressure cuff, where we'll be able to say, you know what, seems like something's going on. Let's do something about it. Let's get you in to talk to a counselor, or let's get you into another dad group. Or you know what, maybe you belong to a church. Why don't you go talk to the brotherhood there, or a pastor? Or, hey, do you have your father? Is your father still alive? Do you have brothers? Or do you have friends? Because we want to recognize the value of people not having to go through things on their own. And we want dads to know that even if one day in the future our questionnaire does say that, you might be at a risk for depression, we want you to know it's not the end of the world. And we want you to know that there are people that are safe to talk to. And we want those people who are going to be prepared to help dads who might be first-time fathers, who might be having a new baby, or dads who might be experiencing some mental health symptoms. We want them to already be prepared with what other dads have said. And the last big thing that we want to be able to do, and why we want to hear from dads, is we don't want to just assume that us wonderful women, P.S. Happy Women's International Month, we don't want to say that us wonderful women know everything about fatherhood. Because that's not fair to say. So we want to make sure even moms know how important it is to value fathers. That even moms know how important it is to be inclusive of fathers, whether they are married, whether they are co-parenting, or whether they're co-parenting outside the house. We want everyone involved in a child's life to know how important it is to have healthy, nurturing, and secure attachments with their mom. with their dad and also within their community. And when we have strong, healthy attachments between mom and dad, that gives us a greater chance of avoiding or preventing negative outcomes in childhood, adversity in childhood, childhood abuse, neglect, and maltreatment. And it puts us on another path. It puts us on a path for a child's resiliency, excuse me, a child's resiliency, a child's healthy development. All of the things that when we wake up and we look at children, we want that for them. And as we touch the life of one child, one mother, one family, one father at a time, we also know that communities are made up of multiple families. And as we are touching individuals and individual families, we know that we are making things better for a greater community. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir because as we're talking about for all of this event, we're focusing on everyday Ohio heroes. And so if you are a father, please know that the person who really, really needs you to be a hero is your kid. And one of our conversations in our program that I want to leave you with is putting yourself in your child's shoes. I know there are a lot of things that get in the way of fatherhood. I know that there are a lot of things that might interrupt things being seamless between a mother and father. But I want you to remember that it's not just two sides to a story. And I'll tell you, like I tell other people, it really doesn't matter about those two people's sides. What matters is that child in the middle. Did we do everything that we can to help a child have the best outcomes in life? And being able to recognize the importance of fatherhood is something that will also can help us to continue to push children down a pathway to get to healthy outcomes, to be able to grow and be healthy, to be able to grow and learn, and then eventually work towards their own goals and dreams. So I leave you with this activity that we ask our dads to do. Think of your child's name and fill in the blank. So my daughter's name, values Imani. And we ask dads to say, all right, you're being interviewed for this big old book, and they got to do interviews with other people so that they can, get your perspective and other people's perspectives on you. And you give them a list of 5 people who are going to say great things about you, right? And the editor comes back and they're like, oh, you know what? You have kids. We want to make sure that we interview your kids. And you let your kid or kids know they get interviewed for your for your biography too. Then the editor calls you back and is like, sorry. You know what? We have to pick. We have to pick your children's stories or everybody else's stories. Which one you want? And it's a tough choice, right? So we ask you to imagine which one you would choose. The point of the activity is when it comes to someone reflecting on you and your life and your fatherhood, we want you to imagine at the very beginning, right? Whether mom is still pregnant or whether that baby is 1 month old or 12 months old. We want you to imagine at the beginning of that child's life, that child is building their story of you as their dad. And imagine 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, what story will that child get to tell about your role in their life? Doesn't mean you got to be perfect. I'm very sure you've seen a lot of superhero movies by now. They're not perfect. But the one thing that we ask of heroes, and the one thing that I'm asking of you as a dad, as a father hero, is always put on your gear. Always show up. It doesn't matter how many times you mess up. It doesn't matter how many times you have to fix something. And it definitely doesn't matter how many times you realize you don't know what you're doing. What matters to that child in their story of you and their life together is that you were there. And if you find yourself in a position wondering how to be there for my child or how to help another father or another man be there for their child, we welcome you. Please reach out to us or reach out to other programs you're going to hear about today, because fathers' feelings matter. And we want to hear from dads. We want to be able to meet dads' needs. And then we want to be able to sprinkle that magic back out into the world so that women and mothers, healthcare professionals, researchers, and people every day in the community know to recognize and value dads, know to recognize and value that their feelings matter and that they're so important. Thank you for taking time to learn a little bit more about the Father's Feelings Project. We welcome you to reach out to us with any questions. And again, we're very grateful to be able to partner with Ohio Children's Trust Fund and so humbled to be able to have sponsorship and funding from them. And we hope that we'll get to hear from you soon. If you know a dad or if you are a dad yourself with a child under the age of 12 months old, we invite you to reach out to us. Visit our website or contact us via phone. Thank you so very much for your time, and thank you to all of the Everyday Ohio heroes who are going to be recognized here today, and even to those of you who are heroes. And we may not hear your name called, but we still thank you.